Hello everyone, Theo here. Welcome to another time-lapse sketching tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how I sketch this shop house with my usual urban sketching style. The app that I have used is Procreate on the iPad, and the brushes that I have used are Tinderbox and Hearts listed on the side there. And these are free brushes included with Procreate. If you are using an Android tablet, you can use the app called Medibank Paint Pro, and the brushes that I recommend are 83 Sumi brush and 201 Paint 1 brush, which should create the same look and effect as the Procreate brushes that I have used for the sketch. By the way, this video is the condensed version of the full-length tutorial I have made for my patrons. So if you want to check out the full tutorial with extra instructions and also support my YouTube channel at the same time, consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the video description below. This is actually not a very complicated sketch in the sense that the perspective is quite straightforward. There are two vanishing points which are outside of the photo, and because the VPs are outside of the photos, you can't really use them to help you draw those diagonal lines. So to get the angles of the line accurate, you will have to use your own observation techniques and alignment techniques to draw those lines. I'm not sure if you noticed earlier, before I started sketching, I actually created several empty layers. So I like to create around 5 to 6 empty layers before I start sketching, so that I can separate the different elements and the things that I sketch onto the layers, such as the line art, the colors, textures, lighting, the background, the clouds. All this will go onto their separate layers. Now for this sketch, generally speaking, I will draw the big shapes which you see. I draw the walls first, followed by the details on the walls. And it is very important to get the perspective of the walls right, in this case the buildings right, because if you get the perspective wrong at the start, the wrong perspective will affect all the little details that you draw later on, such as the pillars, the windows, the grills, and every little thing. The wall on the right side of this building has compressed perspective. So when you're drawing the distance between, for example, the pillars, the distance between the pillars that are further away should be smaller compared to the distance between the pillars that are closer to us. That is how perspective works. Things that are further in the background will appear to be smaller. The distance between all those elements will appear to be closer together. The pillars were drawn first so that they can be used to divide the wall into 3 sections. And I have also drawn the midline to divide the first floor from the second floor. And after you have divided the walls into smaller and smaller sections, you can draw the details such as the windows within those smaller areas, and then you can draw the window frames within the windows. So that's usually how I sketch. Draw the big shapes first, followed by the small shapes by dividing the big shapes, and then draw the details. Now this photo is cropped quite tight in the sense that we do not see any buildings on the left and also on the right side. So right now I'm actually using my artistic license to add more buildings, to add more structure to the sketch, just to create this contrast, because later on when I color this building, I want the building to stand out with the colors and contrast it with the background buildings which are more muted. And now I'm just adding that little car parked at the end of the street. It's good to add cars, plants, and people in your scene because these elements can make your scene look more lively. And also they can help create this sense of scale because we know how big a car is, and if we know how big a car is, by comparison, we can get a sense of how big this building is. The coloring process is actually quite straightforward, and I'm using the tinderbox brush to color this. The nice thing about the tinderbox brush is you can actually tilt your Apple Pencil on the side to get those broad strokes, and you can use that to color big areas very quickly. So I use the side of the Apple Pencil to very quickly block out the big shapes, and then later on I can color the details easily on top of the big areas of colors that I have already painted over. And now I can add details to the windows and the pillars. For the windows and pillars, I'm using black again because later on I will need to draw some white lines over the black areas to create the window frames and the grills. And I actually shaded the black areas with the tinderbox brush, and I was able to create some texture with that, which is quite nice. My coloring style, as you can see, is very fast. I'm not very particular about keeping the colors within the lines, within the shapes. It is possible to be neater, but it's also going to take more time, and that's just not my style. If you are sketching this on location, you will know that sometimes it's quite tiring to sketch on location, especially if it's a very hot day. So I like to work fast, and this sketch actually took me about 30 minutes to draw and color, so that's actually quite fast. If I were to draw this with watercolor, it's going to take me about 1.5 hours. So after adding the colors and the details, I can now add the shadows, which are actually on its own separate layer. The color of the shadow is 50% gray, and I have a multiply mode on the layer, so this 50% gray will multiply onto all the colors beneath. So this is a very quick and easy way to create shadows. And if you need to make the shadows darker, you can select the layer to increase the opacity or reduce the opacity depending on how you want the shadows to look. For the sky, I'm using the hearts brush, which can create very nice textured coloring. So these are just some of the ways I use to create more textures with my digital sketches. At this stage, I feel like I need to draw some additional lines on the left and right side so that the sketch doesn't feel like it's cut off at the edges. So I'm just drawing some very loose sketches to suggest other buildings that are on the left and on the right side. I feel like this makes the sketch look more, complete. Alright, so this is the completed sketch. If you want to learn more about digital drawing techniques that you can use for urban sketching, do check out the online art courses that I have on Patreon and on Skillshare. The links are in the video description below. See you guys in the next video. Bye!